the beginning of school is started, you call the school and say, who is my child's tracking teacher? Who is my child's case manager? Get their name, get their email, and that's your first go-to. Email them, hey, I'm Susie's mom. Susie had a bad morning, or I need to look at the IEP again. That is your go-to person. That's so important for you to know that tracking teacher.
This is NICU Babies Parent Support with Kathryn Whitaker, a podcast from Hand to Hold, a national nonprofit that provides free personalized support, resources, and community before, during, and after a NICU stay. My conversations here focus on education and personal stories with medical and hospital professionals, counselors, therapists, and NICU moms and dads from across the country. So whether you're preparing for a NICU stay, you're currently there, or you're months and years past your stay, you belong here. The NICU is hard. We're here to help. I'm your host, Kathryn Whitaker, the mom of 6 children, including my very own NICU baby, and I'm so grateful that you're here. Howdy, y'all, and welcome back to the podcast. This season has been all about hope, and I have loved some of the stories that we have heard from people who have been in hard places and spaces, and they're saying, this is how I found hope, and this is how I got to the other side. We have so many more coming, but today we're shifting a little bit into someone who has had so many different experiences with special education, and the hope that I found actually in our interview was just so good, and I know that you're going to love it. Sometimes I think when we find ourselves in a new place with our kids, maybe it's a new medical diagnosis, it's a new realization of the challenge that lies ahead. Sometimes it's easy to abandon hope or to feel completely and totally overwhelmed and like, we're going to do this, or how am I going to do this? And so today I wanted to give you some practical tools, but also some perspective that you can do this and that there is hope to be had. So I think that today's guest is going to do all of that and more. And as we sort of look at, we're on the precipice of a brand new school year, and perhaps you were looking at your child in a school setting and you have some concerns or you have some doubts as to, does my child need some extra assistance in the classroom, and should I reach out for help? So if that's you, or even if it's not you and you just need to know that someone out there is an advocate for your child, you're going to love this episode. My guest today is Suzanne Blume. She began her career as a special education teacher, driven by her passion for supporting individuals with special needs, which was inspired by having a sister with similar needs. After teaching across various grade levels and handling a wide range of disorders, she earned her diagnostician certification and spent a lot of years doing that within the public school system. And then in 2017, she established her current business, Blume Advocacy and Consulting. While maintaining her role in the public schools, her business provided her with valuable insights into the needs of parents by consulting with them. And we share a little bit about that in the interview, and I think it's going to be really helpful to you. She specializes in guiding parents through the process after diagnosis, what the next steps are, obtaining evaluations, and also working with their individual education plans, or IEPs, for their children. And then she continues to support them after graduation with rehabilitation services, residential facilities, and other entities. In addition to her consulting work, she also serves as an adjunct professor teaching education courses, and she supports school districts with Child Find, dyslexia, and evaluations. She also, as if there was more to go, she's also pursuing a doctoral degree in special education law. Y'all, she is the real deal, and you are going to love our conversation. So with that, let's chat. Well, I'm excited to have someone. So we met in a fortuitous way on campus at Texas A&M while we were taking pictures of our cadets and the Corps of Cadets at A&M. And I think I exchanged, I think we said we should share pictures or whatever. And I got your card and I was like, wait,
Right.
You're connected to special education. We should talk. And so I'm grateful that you're here. So Suzanne, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited about it.
Well, there's a lot to special education that I'm learning as I go. So while I say that I have some experience with one of my kids, I know that you have way more experience, which is why you're here. So maybe let's start all the way from the beginning. What was it that got you interested in the world of special education and teaching and education?
Yeah. So I kind of approached me in a different type of way. So I actually got into the field because of my sister, and I can kind of go into her situation a little bit, but into the fact of advocacy. I was a special education teacher, and we went to due process. And during that process, I sat across the table from an advocate who was representing a family. And it was so interesting watching her work with that family and what she was, just the whole process and what she was telling her. And it just made me open up my eyes to, being a special education teacher on this side of it, the parents just feel so isolated and overwhelmed, especially in those meetings. And I was like, I want to be just like her. So that's kind of how I got into it. Well, but I'm still representing the district side as well. But I now know so much more on the advocacy side and the parent side.
Well, that's why you're here. So tell us a little bit about your sister.
Yeah. So Jackie was my little sister, and she was born in the 80s. And back then, the diagnoses were a little bit different. Federal guidelines had different diagnoses through the DSM-4. I believe it's the DSM-5 now. And so she was diagnosed with PDD-NOS, which is a pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified. And so, in other words, it's doctors saying, we don't know what's wrong. She was given so many different diagnoses over the 10 years while she was growing up, until finally we found a doctor down at the Texas Medical Center that said, you know what? She just has a cognitive delay. She's intellectually disabled. And of course, back then it was mental retardation, and we have kind of moved from those derogatory statements and such. So she just was intellectually disabled, and she never really developed over that 18-month development. So she was an adult living in a child's body and mind cognitively. And I just saw my parents struggle with the school system and not really knowing what to do with her. How do we deal with her? How do we treat her appropriately for her age while she still has that cognitive delay? And that really opened my eyes to becoming a special education teacher. And that's when I went to college, went on with my master's, and then eventually got that diagnostician's certification. So, but now, I was very fortunate to have a sister with those needs because I got to see the family side of it. And so I think it gave me a little bit more empathy as a teacher to understand what those parents were going through. We're not always going to have good days when they come to school and drop them off in the mornings. Lots of missing school because of medical reasons. I think it just opened my eyes up to a whole another side of having special needs, especially a sibling. But yeah, Jackie's great. I got to see the graduation aspect of it, going on to day habs, the residential facilities. So she just is my shining star. She is the one that just is why I'm here today. So
Wow. I'm thinking about, I mean, we're all formed, I think, by our experiences. But as I'm listening to you share all the pieces and parts of your own experience, like you're like the total, how did I luck upon finding you? I'm so grateful. Like, I think that you're going to be such a resource for parents who are feeling exactly what you said. Like, they're feeling overwhelmed, or maybe this is a situation that they've never been a part of before, and they don't know what questions to ask. They don't know what advocacy they can, fight for, or how they can help their child be the best version that their child can be. So I think I'm really glad
absolutely.
you're here. So why don't you talk about, so you mentioned diagnostician. So did you start in the classroom as a special education teacher and then move into the diagnostician
Did
role?
I? Yes, ma'am. I was a teacher for 10 years, and I did everything. I did from kindergarten to high school. I did cognitive delay, emotional disturbance, autism, everything. My master's is in autism and emotional disturbance. So I kind of went down that route with the behavior aspect of it. I loved working with those kiddos that had those emotional disabilities, and became a behavior specialist. And so that's when I started kind of moving towards the diag, going, well, why is this happening? How are
Right.
they getting this diagnosis? Tell me. I wanted to learn more. And so that's how I got into the diag situation.
So did you have a favorite age group when you were teaching? I'm just curious. Sometimes teachers tend to gravitate towards one age group.
When I was in elementary, I loved elementary. Then I went to middle school and junior high. I loved that. But then once I got to high school, oh, that was my niche. High school
Okay.
was my favorite. I felt like I was able to communicate with those kiddos a little better. I felt like I could understand where they were coming from. They had more of an advocate role for themselves. They could start to speak up and advocate for themselves, whereas the little ones really can't. They're very dependent on their parents. And I liked that high school aspect because I felt like I could give them more, I guess, more advice and suggestions as to how they can navigate their route, how they can get through graduation. And that, yeah, I definitely high school. I probably could not go back to elementary.
Well, my mom was a teacher and she fell in love with middle school. So
Okay.
I think every teacher sort of has their lane where they get there and they're like, oh, yeah, this is where I can make the biggest difference because I really connect with these kids because of this reason. So I'm always curious why teachers are gravitating towards a specific age group of kids. So, all right. So maybe explain for some people who don't know what a diagnostician is or does, give people an idea of when you were in that particular role, what that looked like.
Right. So a diagnostician, basically what they do, I'm not going to put myself on the same field as a doctor, but I am giving what's called an eligibility. So doctors diagnose and diagnosticians give eligibilities. And so what that means is in a school setting, I have to look at what's causing the academic delays. So, for example, if a child came to school and their parent suspects a disability, whether it's a specific learning disability, speech impairment, there's like 13 different categories. I'm responsible for doing a whole entire full individual evaluation on that child, going back to birth. How long was the pregnancy? Was it a early birth? I mean, diagnosticians, we do a lot. I don't think a lot of people, parents and school employees, don't understand what we do because it's so it's so thorough and intense because everything is like a domino effect. If they were premature, that could have caused this. If they were transient when they were, moving around a lot when they were 2, 3, 4. If they were in foster care, there's so many, they fell, they hit their head. I mean, there's so many things that we have to, as diags, get information from parents to figure out what was causing this academic deficit. And so we have 45 school days in the state of Texas. It's 60 school days in the federal government to get this evaluation complete. There are several different areas that we have to look at. We have to look at speech, we have to look at health, sociological, intellectual, emotional, academic, and then assistive technology. And we put all of that together, and it's a lot of pressure because we have to look at that and see how they meet that eligibility under state guidelines. We have to look at the strengths and weaknesses. Is there a pattern? Is there not a pattern? Do they have an outside evaluation? And so in those 45 school days, we have a lot of pressure. We're testing, we're doing IQ testing, we're doing academic testing, we're doing speech testing. There's just a lot involved.
And they're also going to school. Like, I'm sitting
Uh,
here thinking, when we
yes.
first did it, I remember thinking, 45 days seems like too long. And as I'm sitting here listening to you, I'm like, that feels like maybe not enough.
It's not, because what happens is the school district puts lots of other things on our plate. So not only
Yes.
are we doing all of this, we're also sitting in ARD meetings with other
Yes.
families. We're also doing reevaluations. We're also meeting with teachers. We're also doing staffings. It is a lot. And I think there's such a need for diags because they're kind of dwindling out, because there's so much pressure and we just don't have the time. But yes, if parents will be very patient with us, but stay on top of things as well, but understanding that it's very important parents give us the most information as possible, because without the information from them, it's hard to give that eligibility for those kids.
So if a parent is listening to this thinking, "Hey, I'm noticing some things with my child that maybe they have other children, right?" And so that's their barometer like, "Hey, my other kids were meeting this milestone or reading this book or understanding this math problem at this particular age and my child is not." How does a parent advocate well for their child in a public school setting and say like, what's the steps, Suzanne, to say like, "Okay, I noticed something, and then now how do we get someone to do what you said, take a look at the whole picture and then move forward with the plan."
Right. My best advice for parents is to do it all through documentation through email.
Okay.
or a physical letter. So many times we can call people and leave messages and the ball gets dropped. So as a parent, you need to make sure you email the school. Always CC the assistant principal, the RTI or MTSS. I know these are lots of acronyms, which I have on my website for parents, but we have to see that the school district has tried different interventions. And if those interventions are not working and the parents are like, okay, this is not working, he's being pulled out, the next step needs to be taken care of. So that's where they need to send that email. And even to the diagnostician and say, look, something's not right. I'd like my child tested. The school district then has 15 days to follow through with that email. So stay on it. Parents, mark your calendar. I sent the letter on Monday, 15 school days
Full
is
days.
this
Yep.
date. And this is when I need to touch back with the school to figure out what's going on. So stay on top of it. You have to realize that, just like I said, they're busy. We keep our timelines, but we're being pulled in several different directions as well. So just give them grace, be patient, and do your due diligence. Have that calendar date ready, and touch base with the school.
I know that when we were in kindergarten, we suspected in pre-K something might be up. So the first week of kindergarten, I let the teacher get through the first week. Fortunately, our child's kindergarten teacher was a former special education teacher. And so I emailed her and I said, I think something's going on. Like, let's take the step. And the email back, she was like, I'm noticing that too, but yes. But I found the response interesting from one of I don't know if she was the diagnostician or not, but she said, typically we don't test kids this young. We wait until they're older. And I said, I don't care. I still want you to do it.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm going to ask you, is there ever an age that's too young to ask?
No, I mean, obviously, if your child is born and we see that, there's something going on, that's first day. Okay.
Right.
Of course, with Down syndrome, you can pretty much see that, there's different disabilities, CP, cerebral palsy, but no, there's never too young. So the school district has a right to, or the school district must test a child from the age of 3 on. Now, if the child is age 2 and you're suspecting something, you would go through what's called ECI. It's early childhood in the state of Texas. And you would tell them, hey, something's going on. My child's not developing right. They're not speaking. And ECI will help you in the state of Texas until they're 3. At the age of 3, the school district is required by law to test your child. So it's not too early. I would not wait until kindergarten. I think that's a misconception, to be honest with you. I think
I
people
agree.
think, let's wait till they get to kindergarten. Let's see how they're progressing. And sometimes that's too late, especially with autism, their social development is not there yet. And if you keep waiting and waiting and waiting, it just, they don't get that help that they need. So I
Right.
would definitely tell parents if they're seeing something's not right, they need to go ahead and speak up. Parents, a lot of times I see it with parents who have children for their firstborn. They don't have anything to compare it to. And
Right.
so they might hear little tidbits from families or friends, and they just are kind of in a denial state. I think at that point, if they ever are having those little red flags or feeling something, they should always go to their pediatrician and ask. They can always go to the daycare. I mean, someone like you had that teacher that had a special ed background, just kind of talk to somebody about it. It's better to figure something out early than later.
So give me an idea of, okay, so let's say maybe a parent isn't noticing some things at home, but the teacher obviously is spending, while not more time with your child, different kind of time. Like they're seeing them in an educational environment. Can a teacher ever say to a parent, or is it discouraged? Like, oh well, don't say that to that parent because maybe we can fix it, or maybe it's not as big of a deal. Like, what's the role of a teacher in this position? Like, if she or he sees something and is concerned, what do they
Right.
usually do?
Right.
By law, like, what can they do?
By law, teachers are required. They're still under child fine. Teachers by law are required to speak up. They have
Okay.
to, because they're the first ones the children see. The children are in their classroom. They're the ones picking up on all these cues. They're in that academic setting. So by law, teachers have the right and must say something. And they have to say something on the school side. They have to go to the counselor. They have to go to the RTI, the 504 coordinator, whoever it is that takes those referrals in. They have to go to them and say, hey, Johnny's just not, I'm not seeing him, equally as with his peers. And I think we might need to ask for an evaluation. I know it's a fine line. It's very difficult to tell a parent that something might not be right with their child.
Right.
So, they just have to do it gracefully and kind and with respect. But it needs to be done because we don't want these kids to fall far behind, and we want to give them the same education to be successful as everybody else.
Exactly. I mean, I know that we had a little principal coffee not too long ago, and I was noticing. I mean, sometimes when you're, I'll say, an experienced mom, you're an experienced mom who's been around the school system for a long time. Sometimes when you get a brand new teacher, they feel intimidated, like, oh, maybe she or he knows what they're doing, and I don't. And I told the principal, I said, please tell your teachers never to doubt like their instincts or what they see in the classroom. Like, encourage them to speak up, because I said most parents, while it's never easy news to hear, you're always grateful when someone speaks up, because then that means that you can help your child be the best version that they can be. And so I said, just encourage them to do that, because, and maybe if there's a teacher listening, like, don't be afraid of moms like me. Say it anyway, because we all want our kids to thrive, certainly. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely, we do.
this podcast is produced by Hand to Hold, a national nonprofit, but we're more than simply a podcast. Be sure to download our app in the Apple Store or on Google Play, or you can visit our website to discover all the ways that we can support you as a NICU parent at handtohold.org. You can join one of our support groups, sign up for counseling, find loss and bereavement support, request a peer mentor, or check out our educational resources and family stories. And all of that is at no cost to you. All right, so let's say that a child has been, you've looked at them as the diagnostician, you've looked at them and you're like, yes, we have some concerns. So what's the next step? And after the tests are done, then how does a parent move forward with identifying goals and strategies and then moving forward in the classroom in the academic setting?
Right. So after we complete that full individual evaluation, it's the FIE, we come together as a committee, and that committee consists of a general education teacher, a special education teacher, a district representative, the evaluation staff, which could be a school psychologist or a diagnostician, and then the parent. So those are the 5 people that are required by law to sit in that meeting. And of course, anybody else can sit in. If we have related services, if there's, deaf ed can be involved, or visual impairment, or OT, PT, just everyone that is involved in that full evaluation come together. And it is intimidating for parents because you're walking in. First of all, I apologize. The diag should have reviewed that report with the parent prior to that meeting.
Yes.
You don't want the parent walking into this meeting and seeing that evaluation for the first time. So hopefully, best practices, those diagnosticians have reviewed that entire report with the parent. And after that, we meet as a committee. And what happens is if they do meet eligibility, we will sit down and formulate a plan. And that plan is a specially designed instruction. It's SDI, which is implemented into an IEP, which is the individual education plan. That IEP is basically the Bible on how to take care of this kiddo and how to even the playing field. It consists of accommodations, the specially designed instruction, which is the goals, and then some type of curriculum or schedule of services. So, for example, if a child has a specific learning disability in reading, we would give him some reading support in the reading class. We would give him a goal to address that reading deficit, whether it's fluency or dyslexia or what have you. And then what we do is we progress monitor that. And that's what parents, I think, really need to understand is that we don't just make this IEP and give it to the kid and go, okay, see you in a year. We have to progress monitor that IEP over time. Every grading period, we're looking at it. Are they making improvements? Are they getting, are we getting better grades? Are we doing better in the class? Do we need to move out of that class? So my advice to parents for sure is to stay on top of that. You can ask for the data at any time. So don't feel like you need to wait until that grading period to say, oh my gosh, now he's failing and it's been 6 weeks and then it's going to be hard to recoup that. Parents, if you want, you can ask for the data anytime, just anytime. So parents need to be advocates. Parents need to understand their rights. They need to know what that IEP entails and how they can look at it and make sure it's being implemented with fidelity.
So you have a beautiful business where you help parents be better advocates in that meeting. Because I think, Suzanne, I think you're right. Even if a diagnostician goes over the details with you, and even if you hear the goals and the stuff, you start to wonder, like, can I ask for that? Or should we have done more testing here? Like, give people an idea of what you do now in helping parents be really excellent advocates for their kids, both in that meeting, but also just in general in their academic venture.
Right, right. So a lot of my clients come to me and they just want me to review those reports. They want me to look at the full individual evaluation. Was the correct testing done? Do we need more testing? And when can I ask for more testing? So that's what I do is look over that full evaluation and just go step by step by step, line by line, explaining everything to them, what the tests mean. Then we take that and we look at their IEP. They send me the IEP. I go through it step by step by step. I look at the school district's policies. Do we have all those policies implemented? Is the school doing everything right? And then I tell them the next steps. This is what we need to do next. This is what you can ask for next. I don't charge for a consult. I'm completely free because I want parents to be in the know. The more knowledge the parents have, the better. So I just speak to them and tell them, here are your resources. Here's where you can go. You can text me, email me anytime. If it gets to a point where the district is not listening to the parents, and that's where the advocacy comes in, you go and sit with the parent in the ARD meeting, you're representing the parent, you're speaking on their behalf, and you're really letting the school district know that, they may not be doing anything right or they may not know. A lot of times the school didn't realize that something wasn't being implemented correctly. And so we just kind of bring it to their attention and ask them for the next steps.
Well, I know that when you looked over ours, I shared it with my husband. He was like, wow, there were so many other things that we should have asked for and things that we didn't know. And I mean, it wasn't our first ARD meeting, but sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And
Right.
so I was really grateful that you
Oh,
did
I'm
that.
so glad.
So hallmarks of a good IEP. Like if a parent's looking at their IEP and they're thinking, these are either green flags and everything's going well, or these might be some yellow and red flags, and maybe we need to revisit those. So, what would be hallmarks of a good one, and what would be things that parents might need to look at to be like, we need better clarification?
Right. So, well, here's what I think. First of all, that we need to kind of go over is when you're in that ARD meeting and you're going over the draft of the goals and the accommodations. Parents really need to ask for that draft 5 days in advance so that they can have the knowledge of what we're discussing. Okay, it's called participating meaningfully in that meeting. You're not going to just walk into something and be given paperwork and not know, just now seeing it for the first time. So parents
Right.
ask for that ahead of time. So when we're looking at the IP, green flags would be a great schedule of services. Where is the child going to address that deficit area? Are we going to the right classes? Do we need any other type of classes that might help him in that area? Dyslexia, are we getting dyslexia program? If they're in a life skills type setting, are they getting that class? Are they getting functional curriculum in that classroom? Those would be really good things to look at. And then accommodations. A big one I see is that they don't address the deficit area. So the red flag of that is you've got all these accommodations for your child, and none of them address their area. It's kind of like we want to address their vision, but we're not giving them the right glasses. We want to address assistive technology, but we're not giving them the right keyboard or the right reading keyboard. So make sure those accommodations are addressing the deficit area, okay? Because we want to
That's
level
good
that playing
advice.
field. And another green flag would just be to make sure those goals are being progress updated. Once you get that IEP and you're looking at it, are we making progress on the goals? Is it being held to a higher standard? We don't want to look at goals. A red flag would be 60% or 30% or 40%. Our kids are better than that. Let's raise
Yes.
the bar. If we need to have objectives on those goals to let them meet those goals in increments, that's great. But we want high expectations for our kids. So I would ask for make sure those percentages or those trials are held with rigor for sure. Yeah. And then I was going to say one other thing is, once they're 14 in the state of Texas and they're going through transition, I would make sure our kiddos are in those meetings with us. We
Yes.
want them to be able to speak up on their behalf. I don't know. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a
I'm
meeting.
so glad that you said that. I'm so glad that you
Yes.
said that.
I'll have a 14 or 16 or 18-year-old and they're like, I've never met that person before. I didn't have that goal, or I've never looked at that accommodation. I've never been giving, oral administration. And so I'm just like, your kids, even at younger than 14, can speak on their behalf. Hey, Susie, is this working right? Hey, is your teacher giving you those oral accommodations? Are you using your headphones? Are you being pulled for class? Talk to your kids, talk to the kids. They can let you know what's going on and what's working and what's not working.
What are some things that parents usually overlook? I mean, I know you talked about the 5-day, like, look over that. I'll say that I'll offer this is that I felt bad when our meeting went over an hour. And then I talked to a friend, her son has Down syndrome, and she said, our meetings last about 7. And I'm like, okay, so now I mean, I'm not saying that I should have gone for 7 hours, but I guess I didn't think that I could go past an hour, like that I felt like I was inconveniencing. And I know much of that depends on the academic needs of your particular child and how involved their IEP is, but I think I always felt bad that I was wasting their time.
Okay,
So,
here's how we don't waste their time. When the meeting is coming, right? You have that
mhm,
5-day letter saying, hey, we're going to have a meeting. Okay. So when you know that meeting is coming up and you have concerns, send them to the school. Hey, at our ARD meeting, we want to discuss this, this, and this. That way, it's giving the school time to try to look and see what those issues are that you may be having. So they can participate meaningful and you can. When you're in that ARD meeting, it can last as long as you want, but make sure the school knows, okay? Say, hey, I think my meeting's going to have to go longer than an hour. I may be bringing a consultant. I'm bringing my neighbor. I'm bringing the doctor, whoever you're bringing. It's going to last longer than an hour so that they can allot that time.
yeah,
It is an inconvenience. I will tell you, it's an inconvenience when we have to, as a school side, have parents sit in there for 2-3 hours because you're taking away staff. You're having to get gen ed teachers covered. You're having to get APs covered. You're having to get counselors covered. It is, but it's necessary. It's needed for that parent. That parent usually only gets once a year to sit down with their
right.
school and go over that IEP. So you want to make sure you tell them, I'm going to need more than an hour so that they can allot that time. Also, parents need to know that they can call a meeting anytime. You don't have to wait for that 1 year. You can have a review ARD if there's something that's going on that you need to change in the IEP. You can have an amendment completed. I don't like these accommodations, or the kid's not using these accommodations. Or we recently had a hospital visit and I need to put this accommodation. He's going to be needing to go to the restroom more often. Can we add this accommodation? So don't ever be afraid to reach out. And that brings me to this step. Every child in the state of Texas has a case manager. Schools call them different things. They might be a tracking teacher. Every child has one. And that school employee is responsible for that IEP. And parents, the beginning of school is started. You call the school and say, who is my child's tracking teacher? Who is my child's case manager? Get their name, get their email, and that's your first go to. Email them, hey, I'm Susie's mom. Susie had a bad morning, or I need to look at the IEP again. That is your go to person. That's so important for you to know that
That's
tracking
good.
teacher because they're your angel at school, to be honest with you.
That's such good advice. So if a parent, I know you mentioned that they can call an
Mhm.
ARD meeting at any time. How often should your child be tested? I know we talked about the original diagnostician and going over everything, but at certain periods they need to be retested to see, like, where are we? Like, yes, you can have goals and you can have tangible evidence, but also those tests sort of give you an idea of where you are. How often should those happen? How often should you be asking for those? Give us an idea about that.
All right. So if your child is diagnosed at an early age, like at age 3, you have to get that reevaluation by the age of 9. So diags are taught with best practice that we're going to have 2 full evaluations in elementary school. Okay. So
Okay.
you may have one prior to kindergarten, but you're going to have 2 in elementary. You may have it at first grade, may have it at 4th grade. The rule is every 3 years, we're going to look at that reevaluation. But what we do is it's called a read through at that 3-year mark. we'll tell parents, hey, we know that your child has autism. We know your child has a visual impairment. We don't have to test them again to know that. So we're going to
Right.
read them through to the next 3 years. But what's important for parents to know is that we need to have an evaluation in junior high, and we have to have one in high school. I see it all the time. Students will graduate high school, they'll go to college, and college will be like, your last cognitive score, your last cognitive exam was in elementary school. So they like to see updated testing. Four-year colleges, A&M, U of H, whoever you go to, want to have a full evaluation around junior and senior year. So ask for one then. It gives you a good update on their cognitive abilities. It gives you a good update academically. So again, the rule of thumb, 2 in elementary, you're going to have 1 in junior high and 1 in high school.
I'm so glad I asked that question. That's some good advice. And I think, well, and I think sometimes too, in element in at least from kinder to 12, we call it an IEP. And then when your kids get to college, which I didn't realize this until I had a kid in college who needed accommodations, that she went to the disability office. She sat down with them. She said, these are the things that I need. She has to reevaluate every semester. So she has to basically they have to lay eyes on her, and we go through that. And I just keep thinking, I would never have advocated for that had I not had another kid who needed special education services, and I'm
Right.
grateful that that is extended all the way through your educational career, wherever it may be. So we're not just talking about accommodations in elementary school, but you can hold on to those accommodations in some way or form all the way through your educational career.
Well, all the way through adults, you can have
Yeah.
one. 99. So that's called a 504 plan. So what they do is they take that IEP because, again, remember that IEP has specially designed instruction, which means it has the SOS page, the schedule of services, the goals, and that curriculum. So when you go to college, we professors can't do all of that, right? So it turns
Right.
into a 504, which is under the Office of Civil Rights. So that 504 plan follows them through college, and like you said, is updated every semester. But then if whoever your daughter, your son needs that 504 plan for employment, the employer is required by law to give them that 504 plan. They might need extra time when they're taking notes during meetings, during corporate meetings. They might need something that text to speech whenever they're taking notes. So that 504 plan can go with them everywhere, everywhere.
I hope that gives some parents some hope, because sometimes I think we fear that when they get to a certain level that no one's going to care anymore. And I think we just have to learn how to be good advocates for the services that exist, and then insist that they receive those services. So I think, like you
Absolutely.
said, when those 14-year-olds, I love that advice, by the way, because when they sit in that meeting, then they learn how to be an advocate for themselves for the rest of their life. So you're
Right,
helping them build good lifelong skills, not just in an education setting.
right,
We all should be good advocates for ourselves, but what a great place to start the path of doing that. If they're cognitively able to do that, what a great foundation to lay. I love
right.
that.
And
Well,
and
normally, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, what you have to realize too, though, in the state of Texas is when they turn 18, their parents don't have rights anymore in the
Right.
education setting. And so if you're teaching them those advocacy roles when they turn 18, they no longer need their parents in those meetings. So,
Right.
that's where parents would have to get that supported decision making or get the guardianship completed for them. So it is really good to start early with that.
I love that. I normally ask for advice as my last question, but this season has been a lot about hope. And so, what hope can you give a parent, Suzanne, that feels overwhelmed by the system, but just deeply desires a better outcome for their child?
I think the hope that I would give them is that they need to find someone that is understanding what they need mentally, physically, socially. I mean, what the parent, I'm talking about the parent, not the child, what the
Hmm.
parent needs, because parents feel so lost and unheard that they really need to seek out someone. Again, it could be a parent, it could be a neighbor, it could be a teacher, it could be just someone. There's lots of free support out there as well. But don't give up hope, because someone out there is going to understand what you need and how to address that in your child and how to give your child what you need, what they need in school. You know, the state of Texas wants to do everything we can. Districts want to do everything. Teachers want to do everything they can for those for kids. You just have to get the empathy with them, and you have to get their understanding of where that child's coming from. So I there's don't give up hope. There's people out there that can help for sure.
That's a good way to end it. Suzanne, thank you for all your really, really great advice. I loved that interview. I sat there and thought, man, those are things that I wish we had done in our first ARD meeting, or those are things that I'm going to do in my next ARD meeting. And I think there were definitely some moments that I thought, I'm so glad that she mentioned that. I'm so glad that parents got to hear that. Maybe the number one, honestly, hands down, when your child is old enough and they have the cognitive ability to do this, that age around 14 of involving them in that annual review, allowing them to sit at that table. Who are the people that are here? Who are the people that are supposed to be advocating on my behalf, helping me? I can actually ask questions. I just keep thinking, certainly as a NICU mom, we are actually starting to encounter this with some of our son's pediatric specialists. He will be 15. Actually, by the time this airs, he will be 15. And we are starting, he's definitely been in those doctor visits, but we're getting ready to start transitioning some of his care to adult pediatric specialists. And so what Suzanne shared in this particular interview of involving our kids and their advocacy and in their rights and in their responsibilities and what it is that they need to do on their end and what they can ask of other people who are assisting them and helping them. Such excellent advice. So in today's 2-minute take, that's it. That's all I have for you, because there's so much more that Suzanne shared so much more eloquently. But that one, I think, really transcends not just an educational setting, but in so many other places of teaching our kids how to be advocates for themselves so that it can benefit them for the rest of their life. We have so much more coming this season. So if you've loved so much of what we've heard, please give us a rating over on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can also watch us over on YouTube, but don't go anywhere, because next time we're going to be chatting about this.
You were chosen for one another. And so when you realize that, I recently heard a quote, and I don't know who said it, but I'm taking it forever and ever. And it simply says this: love keeps you going. Hope moves your feet. Love keeps you going. Hope moves your feet. If there was a theme to Courtney's life, it was that.